So what I really wanted to talk about, we got into, which is the beauty of what happened in Texas and Florida, and whether that is replicable beyond Texas and Florida. I'm always a little reluctant to echo what somebody apparently did at the DeSantis victory celebration the other night. People started chanting 2 more years because they wanted him to run for president. I think there's far too much focus on presidential politics, and it plays well in national media because media has national audience, when I would much rather see a guy like that continue to strive to make Florida great. I'd love to see Greg Abbott, but I know that we have to draw the farm team for presidency is best developed among the governors. And so it would be nice to get somebody like that who has some executive experience and knowing how to deal with the monster that is bureaucracy in doing that. I don't want us in the sadness over what should have been an historic takeover of Congress. I mean, frankly, you've got a tailwind of high inflation, the sense that of a doomed economy. You've got the least popular president in the last, I think, 7 administrations. His approval rating was like at 41%. It was lower by far than anybody else. And in those years when you had an unpopular president, even without a bad economy, you saw big chunks of transition in the House of Representatives. You saw the Senate changing hands and things like that. And here, somehow, I mean, Joe Biden is a genius in the sense that when he ran for office, he hid in his basement. This time around, people wouldn't let him come to speak for them in their campaigns in the states. And so Biden has figured out Charles Grodin's biography title, which is How Nice It Would Be If You Weren't Here. And so he's figured out the magic of not being present. So can we?
I can give you an example of that, Scott. I mentioned my empty suit senator, the Democrat Michael Bennet here in Colorado. Bennett's been trying. He's been a senator for 12 years now. He's been trying this entire time to get, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a World War II Army training camp up in the mountains where 10th Mountain Division units trained up here in the Rockies, right around the Continental Divide. And Bennett's been trying to get this thing designated as a historical landmark, a national landmark for 12 years. And he couldn't get even that through the Senate. I mean, talk about an empty suit, right? So Biden agreed to do it by executive decree. So just about a month ago, Biden came to campaign with Bennett to promote making this former Army camp into a national monument. And they never even made a public appearance together in Denver. They go out to the Continental Divide. They do a thing there, like 90 minutes, 2 hours west of where anybody really lives. And then Biden went away again.
Yeah.
So here's addressing your point about this. I think the mistake will be if we decide that Ron DeSantis is the hope of the future. I think the thing we should be doing is saying, how do we make every governor into a Ron DeSantis? How do we take what's proven to work and apply that everywhere? Because we have, in this 2022 election, despite the disappointment of the outcome, there are some very positive things in there, a large swing of Latino and Black voters towards the Republican Party. And so what we need to do is we need to, it's really very simple. It's not so hard. What's working, what's not working. Clearly, the DeSantis victory in Florida is the bright, not only the bright point of the evening, it's one of these political landmarks that simply says, look what happens when you do this, right? So we've got a chance to I think it's a mistake to say, oh, Trump's not the future, DeSantis is the future. I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is, what did DeSantis do right to win that big? And what does Trump do right to draw that kind of crowd and that kind of enthusiasm? The secret is in there somewhere. Somewhere in between those two people, there is the solution. And maybe the solution is in 2024. You just bronze up DeSantis and give him a blonde wig and let us tie a little long in the front and run him as a candidate. But seriously, what we're seeing on the table is the solution. It's just not assembled yet.
You got to turn it into a formula. You got to
turn it into a philosophy. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and this is probably the product of my my voracious reading lately of business process improvement books. But the secret to that whole thing is that there is a process, and that one of the things that Toyota taught in the early days, before they had names for any of this kind of stuff, was that if you were a new manager in a department, the way they trained you was they said, we're going to have you go down onto the shop floor. We're going to draw a circle on the floor, and we're going to have you stand inside of that circle. And when I come back, we'll talk. 8 hours later, the guy comes back, leaving this new hire standing in a circle on the shop floor for 8 hours, and says, okay, what did you learn? And the key to that whole process is it starts with observation. It starts with being able to clear the mind and watch and see
what is reality.
What is reality?
What's the reality? As opposed to what is our theory of what's going on.
And the philosophy that later became a Japanese word that's gemba, which means go to the work site. Go where the work is happening. Go there, stand there, see what happens, and then engage people who are in that process so that they can be part of the solution themselves. And DeSantis people, not necessarily DeSantis himself, it's not a celebrity thing, but the people who work for DeSantis should be running clinics for the people who work for other governors around the country, saying, okay, here's how to operate a state government. This is how to get things done. Here's how to work with people who oppose you. Here's how to work against people who oppose you. This is how we did it. Not necessarily to say you should copy us, but I want you to think about when you go back to your work site, I want you to look around with new eyes and say, hey, wait a minute. Maybe we've been accepting some assumptions here that just aren't true. Maybe it's possible to change some things and our approach to things to get stuff done or to stop stuff from getting done, as the case may be.
So what you're basically saying is don't copy the results in Florida, copy what we did to get the results in Florida.
Yes.
Copy the process that we did. Yeah, this business of standing in the circle. I heard a guy is talking about Ukraine. He's combat veteran who does commentary on this, and he was saying that he was talking about body cams and how much better it is for intelligence to analyze the body cams afterwards. But he was saying stuff like, well, here's our combat report, right? We were attacked by RPGs. We did this. And then the intelligence guys would say, looking at this report, well, he's obviously mistaken. There are no RPGs there. There must have been mortars, right?
Yeah.
Because our intelligence analysts say that they don't have RPGs. So when he said he was under attack by RPGs, he probably meant mortars. So we'll put down that they have mortars. They don't have RPGs, right? And this combat veteran was saying, this kind of stuff makes us lose our minds, right? Because this is where theory trumps reality. Yeah. Exactly. And there's a similar thing in the days of test piloting, in the golden era of test pilots up in the Edwards Air Force Base. A test pilot would come in and would say something to the effect of, at 620 knots, I started to get aileron flutter. And the engineers would say, well, that's impossible. You couldn't have gotten aileron flutter. You must be misunderstanding it. There must be something that you did that you thought was aileron flutter, because our mathematics clearly show that it's impossible at that speed. Yeah. And somebody, I forget who it was, but somebody came in after this finally and stamped his fist on the table and said, the pilot is always right. He's not inventing things for you to make your life more difficult. He is the one who is dealing with the reality of what the aircraft is doing at 600 knots. You are dealing with the theoreticals of what the aircraft is doing at 60 knots. And the practicality wins every time. And if we don't get this through our thick frickin' heads, then we're going to kill more pilots out there. And we're not going to get the aircraft that we want. And this is the essence of conservatism to me, is what's real. What's not what is there, but what is real, right? There are things that are out there. They're more every day. There are things out there in the world that are false, and they need to be fought with the truth. But we got to know what the truth is, and we got to be open-minded enough to see what the actual truth is. So the takeaway is that for me, the takeaway is, and I guess for the show is what conservative principles when you take conservative principles and you apply them in the real world, you get not just the political victory that you got in Florida, but you got the fact that Florida works, right? It works. That's not just a data point. That's hundreds of data points. Florida works because it's run by conservative, not by a conservative governor. It's run by conservative principles. And this is the thing that we have to get in a bottle, is what was the philosophy, not even the technique, what was the philosophy that made Florida work so well that its governor won by 20 points?
And
Bill, you made me, you reminded me of something I put up on Twitter, I think the morning after the election, Wednesday morning. You look at how frustrated people are with the situation, and then you look at the results from election night, and it is so people said, the boat is sinking. Don't rock it.
And the key with Florida, by the way, going forward, and this is where we have often failed at just as humans in all situations, is something works. So we then think we understand, oh, well, this is the recipe. But really, the recipe was the journey. It was the continued exploration of how to make it better, of how to mitigate the losses and the damage and the bad things that could happen, and how to expand the good things that could happen. So it will only work in the long term if it can outlast the DeSantis administration, because they've instantiated some processes that are designed to be learning processes that continually grow and learn. And we've seen it over and over in companies that have adopted short-term, Lean Six Sigma, total quality management programs and stuff like that. But then that CEO left, and all of a sudden they slipped back into the way things have always been. It's got to be a flywheel with its own impetus to keep going, because the people who do the actual work are rewarded for the innovation that they find and for the waste that they save and for the money that they're able to turn back over to the taxpayers.
Right. So to take your business analogy, what the answer is, the guy who had to go stand in the circle on the ground in Florida for 8 hours, you don't send that guy to Arizona and have him do what he did in Florida. You find a guy in Arizona, make him stand in a circle for 8 hours.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you find out what's going to work there.
Absolutely.
It's the process. Yeah.
And I think
all right,
that's as good a place as any.